Hello everyone, this is Lucas from Chewy Painting. Today I will show you how to paint this Orc Sniper. The model was kindly provided by Taschengelddieb. So let's start with priming. You can prime the entire model with Wraithbone, but be sure if you don't prime it with an airbrush to go in with 2 thin coats of paint. So here you can see how it actually covers in the second coat. So let's start with the base colors. For the weapon, you can take a mixture of Abaddon Black and Lead Belcher. Also, if you like these kind of tutorials, make sure that you've subscribed and hit the bell. I will be releasing a lot of new videos on the new Killteam Box, so stay tuned. Also, as a reminder for this orc, don't forget the bullet in his mouth. Okay, next up I want to show you how to properly use contrast paints. So you can actually mix the two. Many people don't actually use it. And the most important part, contrast medium. Like you really need to take a lot of this into the mixture because then the model will be really light and the undercoat will come through, and then you can partially mix in more darker tones. So the same goes for the backpack. I'm showing it with Fire Slayer Flash and a lot of contrast medium. So it's very diluted and very thin on the model. And then here you can see how I'm taking pure contrast to go only in the lower parts of the model or where there are more shadows. So in this way you can kind of go with the contrast paints in a new or different way that I started when I started using them. I only went over the model with the pure contrast, and when they dry they look kind of dirty. And in this method the main focus is on diluting them a lot and moving the color around. It's a little bit different than with oil colors. You need to be a little faster because they dry a lot faster. So with this contrast trick, you can easily color in the entire model. It's not perfect, but we will go in and fix it in the next steps. And now you just go over the weapon with Nuln Oil and some of the details so that your model is quite wet and you need some time for drying. And once it's dried up, you can continue with the next steps. This is how it should look. Since this is an orc, his weapon will definitely need some rust and dirt. So I'm using AK Interactive Dark Rust Deposits. You can, if you want to, dilute them with a little bit of white spirit to make them more smooth and move more around, or use oil colors for this. But this is straight out of the pot, so it's quite easy. You can make it more interesting with some light rust deposits, but I will not overdo it with this step. This can really look unrealistic, so keep it easy and simple and not too much. Next up, we will go back to the skin. For this, I would take some purple shade and go into the recesses so the skin actually gets a little bit more interesting, and I think purple works wonderful with green tones. So go into the eye sockets, the mouth, and you can also go onto the shadow parts. And here I'm emptying my brush and taking some away again. And once this is all dry, you can go in with some green tones. Here I've listed all the colors I'm using for this model, and then for the brighter parts I'm using Wraithbone, so nearly pure white for the highlights, and all the rest of the models like the arms and stuff like that I will use more the Castellan green and Lauren Forest green tones, mixing in more and more yellow. In this step it's totally up to you how much you actually highlight. You can leave it with the contrast for tabletop standard, but the more time you invest in this step it will look much better. Like always, basically, the more time you spend, the better it looks. Fair and easy. So here I'm going in with pure white, also for the teeth. Now that we've fixed the skin on top of the contrast paints, we're doing the same for the cloth. So we're trying to get 2 different brown tones. One is more this yellowish touch, which is XV88 from GW. As you can see in the top left corner, I'm mixing in more and more Wraithbone on my wet palette in order to do some highlights. And once you're at pure Wraithbone, you can do like highlights like on the armor bullet belt on top. So Once this yellowish brown tone is done, I'm moving into more of a reddish tone. I'm using Mournfang Brown for this step and also mixing in Wrathbone for the highlights. For the boots, I'm using Steel Legion Drab as a base color, but don't spend too much time on this since this will be covered by pigments in the end. Since this orc is a sharpshooter, he will need some good eyes, so go in with some Evil Sun Scarlet and do a black dot. I even went a step further and took pure white as a tiny light reflection for the left corner of the eye. Also, his lens is important. I've mixed some Lothern Blue with Abandoned Black and try to focus on the bottom left corner getting brighter and keeping the upper right pure black, and then into this pure black use a white. To enhance this glossy effect, you can use Ardcoat. You can see here how it will look in the end. Since the rust was a little bit too dominant for my taste, I went over the entire weapon with Agrax again, and once it was dried, I picked out some of the details and did some weathering with a brighter steel, which is Runefang steel, so it gives this used look and scratched on the edges. So focus on the edges and you can do like scratches and stuff like that. This is really easy and fun and gives it this dark look. Also, don't forget the other metal parts on the back. He's got bombs and that kind of stuff. Also, for the bullets, you just tilt the brush in a certain angle and then you can highlight it with the side of the brush. So I went in with pure white for some really high highlights. Now the model's basically painted and we only have to glue it onto the base and do some weathering with pigments. For this I've used Vietnam Earth from AK Interactive, and I'm focusing on the areas that are on the bottom of the model, so the feet and lower part of the weapon, and if you're using tufts on the model, don't forget to make them dirty too. I've used black pigments for any parts of the weapon where fire or bullets would come out. And then I'm cleaning up the base a little bit. You can use your fingers also for that. And then as a last step, you can color the base rim in black, which is super satisfying after all this dirt. This is the final result. I hope you liked it. If you do so, please make sure that you like and subscribe. It really helps me to continue with this kind of content. I'm planning of doing all of the orc members of the Killteam box. Maybe not everyone as a single tutorial, but I will cover most of the models, and also the Death Corps of Krieg will be coming next. And see you next time. Chewie's out. Goodbye.